Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Tristan and today I'm going to tell you exactly how I bought a house at age 24 and made $40,000 from it within the first year. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a like. It helps me out a ton and I will be posting videos every week. And so if you want to see more of that, go ahead and hit the subscribe button. So let me start from the beginning. When I was 20 years old, I moved out of my parents' house and I went and lived in an apartment and I lived with 3 other guys. For the most part, things were pretty great. I had a good friend. It's actually how I met my wife. And I really liked it. I enjoyed it. It was a good place to live. However, I didn't really love living with other people. And so I kind of wanted a place of my own. Now, while I was in college, I was working to try and save up as much money as I could, but I really wasn't working a ton. I kept switching in between jobs. I did some video editing and production with a local YouTuber. And then I also was working for my parents as well as working at the intramural sports at my college. Between all of that together, I probably worked 20 or so hours a week. I had to pay for my own living, my car, my insurance, gas, food, all that good stuff. Luckily, I didn't have to pay for school because my dad actually worked at the university that I went to, and so I got free tuition. So I was super lucky to not have any debt when I started. So when I was about to turn 23 years old, I actually moved out of my apartment and I was living with my best friend's parents. I was actually just living in their basement for a few months as a transition period because I was actually getting married. My wife was still in school. She had about a year and a half, 2 years left, and she was going to become a teacher, an elementary school teacher. And so she was still going to school. I was working. I finally got my first full-time job and it paid me a whopping $37,000 a year. And at that time, I had about $5,000 saved up. However, most of that went to a down payment on an apartment, first month's rent and a security deposit, as well as my wife's engagement ring. So at that time, we were newlyweds. We didn't have a ton of money. And little did we know that about a year and a half later, we'd be buying our first house together. In our current situation at the time, I was making about $37,000 a year. And the apartment that we lived in cost about $1,300 after utilities, parking, and things like that. Now, my wife was also working. However, when she was going to school, she had some times where she wasn't able to work because she had to do things like student teaching that didn't allow her to work those same hours that she was before. Luckily, she had a great company that always let her come back during holidays and when she wasn't student teaching, and even do some work after hours, which was a real help. However, just off of my income alone, we were able to pay for our apartment and save up about $500 a month after paying for things like food and groceries and some entertainment. After a few months of living there and working my job, it kind of became a little sketchy at the company I was with. And so I actually decided to move companies and I got an $8,000 raise when I did, which was awesome. Just after 4 months, it was a huge help. And we were actually able to put most of that back into savings. Throughout my time working there, I also ended up getting another raise, which was like another $4,000 or so that I was again able to put most of it straight into savings. But along with that, my wife actually already had enough money saved up to pay for her schooling. And she happened to get a government grant and a forgivable student loan as long as she taught in the Utah school system. And so with that as well, that was about another $7,000 that we were actually able to put straight into savings. So after about a year and a half, we were able to come up with about a $20,000 down payment that we were able to use to buy our first home. Now, throughout this time, I've been looking at homes. I was looking at all these different places and areas that we wanted to live in and the different price range and kind of what we wanted to get out of the place. This was kind of going to be our home for the next 5 to 10 years. Who knows, kind of however long it would be to get us to that next stage in life. And we really wanted to make sure that it was a good fit for us. Now, when you're looking for a home, you can look for a few different things. We wanted this to be a home that we lived in, but you could also use it to look for our opportunity to have a rental unit. At this time, we had no kids, and so we bought a house that had 4 bedrooms. Because we actually didn't need all the bedrooms, my cousin was also looking for a place to live, and so we actually rented out one of our bedrooms to him, and he paid $430 a month. Now, the house that we bought it for $375,000, and our mortgage on that house at the time, we got it at a 4.5% interest rate, and that cost us about $2,170 a month, and that was before utilities and things like that. And so with my cousin living with us, that cut that down by $430. Now, one thing that's important to know about this home buying process and what we did is I bought it straight off of my income. When we got pre-qualified, we didn't take into account anything that my wife was making. Actually, at the time when we got our first mortgage on this house, my wife's name wasn't even on it. It was actually just I owned the property. Now, with that, the reason we wanted to do that is because one, we didn't want to be house poor. We didn't want to buy the biggest house that we could get with all our money and then have nothing left over to save or invest or do anything else with. And so we got pre-qualified just off of my income alone, and we were able to afford this $375,000 house that we bought. Now, even though my wife wasn't making a ton of money at the time because she was still in school, we knew that after buying the house just a few months later, that she would be working full-time as a school teacher and that she'd be making around $40,000. She got an offer that was around that price and she took it. And so now at this point, 6 months into our house, we were both working full-time. I got promoted at my job. She got a new job. And we were able to afford a much bigger house than we have today, but we didn't really want to. We didn't need a bigger house. We didn't even need this whole house to ourselves, which is why we were renting to my cousin. And so we were able to afford this house and still save up a lot of money. Now, at the time we bought this house, interest rates did seem kind of high to me. 4.5% was the normal at the time. However, it was a little bit more than I wanted to pay. Luckily, with the way that the economy went, interest rates dropped a ton, and that was huge for us. So we actually, after like 6 months of owning our house, we refinanced. And when we refinanced our rate, we got it down from a 4.5% to a 4% rate. And that was awesome. That actually cut our payment down by like $100. And so now we are paying $2,050 a month on top of getting rent. And so really, it was like we were paying $1,620 a month for this home that we live in. So at this point with our house, we were paying about $1,620 a month. Whereas previously with our apartment, we were paying $1,300 a month. Now, even though we were paying a little bit more, we were okay with that because we were building equity into the home. We were building around $500 in equity every single month, which made it so that we were in the long run spending less money on housing while building equity, which was awesome. Now, things continue to go down in terms of interest rates, and this whole pandemic that's going on happened. And because of that, we were actually able to refinance again. So within the first year of owning our home, we ended up refinancing our house twice. Now, you may think, hey, it costs a lot of money to refinance your house. Was it really worth it? Well, the way we refinanced our house, our lender was actually willing to pay for the entire refinance, so we had no out-of-pocket costs. However, by doing that, we just had to take a little bit higher of an interest rate. So instead of giving us like a 3.75 interest rate, we got a 4% interest rate. However, the second time we refinanced our home, we got it all the way down to a 3.125 interest rate. So at this point, our mortgage is $1,870 a month. Now, when we still get paid rent on top of that, it's more like it's $1,440 a month, which is awesome for us. That is super close to the price that we were paying at our old apartment. However, we are building a lot of equity, so really it's a lot cheaper than what we were paying before. Now, one other really cool thing about our home buying process is that when we were looking for homes, we really wanted kind of a new, nice home, new, nicer neighborhood. And so we actually went out of the area that we were looking in. There were a few big cities that we kind of wanted to live in. Not super big compared to maybe the US standards, but at least here in Utah, some bigger cities here in Utah that we wanted to live in. Be closer to work, be closer to friends, families, the things that are happening around town. And so we were really looking for homes in that area, but we could never really find anything in our price range that we really loved. So what we actually decided to do is we went outside of one of the bigger cities, just one city away, which is really a 5-minute drive into that city, not a big deal at all. And we found the perfect home in a growing area. Now, this area is growing a lot because the big city that's right next to it is out of space. There's no more houses. There's a college town. There's a lot of office buildings and things like that. And so really there's nowhere to build new houses. And the population here is growing like crazy. And so by buying a house right outside of that city, we knew that we'd be close enough, and we knew that our property value was probably going to go up. And since we've been living here, that's exactly the case. The second time we refinanced our house, we actually got a new appraisal, and just that appraisal alone made our house go up to $410,000, which was a $35,000 increase than where it was before. From what we can tell, it's not going to stop there. They've announced a lot of new things. They're building a lot more houses here. They're actually bringing office buildings in. So a lot of big companies will come to this city and there will be a higher demand for housing. And this is a great place to live. I can look outside and see mountains. I can go walk around the neighborhood and feel safe. It's amazing. I love it here. I've even been kind of looking around at other house prices that are selling in this area, and they're all selling super quickly. And they're even selling for above market value. And when I see a similar house to mine listed, it's listing for higher than our appraisal value was. So just that alone makes me feel like our house is probably going to be worth more in the future as long as the housing market continues to go up. So within the first year of owning this home, after running the numbers, I figured out that we made about $40,000 on our home purchase. Now, the way I figured that out was one, with the new appraisal where our home went up $35,000 in value. And then two is with the rent that my cousin's paying me by living here. That on top of the savings that we get by building equity instead of paying for rent, all adds up to about $40,000 within the first year. Now that $40,000 may not continue to grow again the next year. However, as our home appreciates in value, as we continue to get rent, and as we continue to pay down our mortgage and build equity, we will continue to build value in this home. And $40,000 and $20,000, $30,000 may not seem like huge numbers. However, when our initial deposit on this property was only $20,000 for a down payment, $40,000 return on a $20,000 investment is awesome. I would take that any day. Now, what I want to do next is kind of tell you the steps and break it down a little bit more and kind of tell you exactly what you would need to do to get similar returns on your money when buying a house. The first thing you want to do is you want to decide what type of home you want. Are you looking for a house that you're going to live in with you, with your family? Are you going to live in there and rent it out to other people? Or are you simply just buying a home as a rental unit that you're going to rent out and not live there? Regardless of what type of home you're buying, you want to make sure that you buy it in a good area. If you're looking to rent it out, it may be a good idea to look for homes that are around a college campus. Once students can start going back to school full-time or even part-time, there's going to be a demand for properties and for rent. And so people are going to want to rent your property if it's in an area that is more desirable. That could be towards office buildings, big cities, right outside of a big city maybe, or in a college town. Now, you'll always want to make sure you find a good deal. So definitely do your research, work with a realtor, and figure out what is selling in the area and for what prices. That way, if you see something come on the market at a good value, you can put in an offer and hopefully get it. Once you figure out what type of home you want, the next step is to get pre-qualified. Now, it's always important to get pre-qualified. That way you can have a realistic idea of what you can actually afford. So when you get pre-qualified, they're going to ask you for a few things. They're going to need your bank statements, they're going to need your employment history, and they're going to need your credit score. And they're going to use all that to come up with a number of how much they're going to want to lend you. Now, another important part to getting pre-qualified is you're going to need to have a down payment. The higher down payment you have, the more home you can afford. At this point, you really need to sacrifice now and start saving up as much money as you can to get a good sized down payment. If you don't get 20%, you're going to have to pay private mortgage insurance, which isn't the end of the world. However, if you can get to that 20%, it'll give you a better return on your investment. Now, the next step, once you kind of know what you're looking for and you have your down payment and you're pre-qualified, is to start looking for homes. Now that you're looking for a house, there's kind of two main things that you want to look for. One is buying it in a college town or next to a big city or just in an area of interest or in an area next to an area of interest. That way, once that area fills up, your area would be next. By doing this, you won't see your home prices skyrocket overnight. However, within a year or the next few years, depending upon the demand in your city and the population growth, you could see some really good growth numbers over a 3 to 5 year period. The other thing you could do if you want a quicker return on your money and have a bit of extra cash on the side is buy a fixer-upper. Now, I'm not an expert on fixer-uppers, and there's a lot of videos out there that can help you with that. However, the basics of a fixer-upper are you buy a house that's listed under market value, that's in a great neighborhood, however, may not be the best house in that neighborhood. Make sure that it has a good structure and good bones. Get an inspector to inspect it. Now, once you buy that fixer-upper, you can use the cash that you have on the side to put it in the home and make it a little bit nicer and a lot more desirable. Now, that could be simple things such as replacing the carpet, maybe some new paint, maybe some landscaping, but what you want to avoid is huge changes that we'll need. Something like adding a bathroom or knocking down walls or redoing electrical or plumbing work. Those things are really expensive, and although they could be worth it if you get the house for the right price, they're a lot more work. And so for buying your first home, I probably wouldn't recommend it. Now, once you followed all those steps, you figured out what house you wanted, you got pre-qualified, you saved up your down payment, you found the house you want, it's time to buy that house. So go ahead and work with that real estate agent to put the offer in and get that home. Now, one important thing is once that home is yours, you have to start paying the mortgage down. So if you buy a fixer-upper, fix it up as quick as you can, good quality, rent it out, live in it, do what you need to do. Or if you buy a normal house that doesn't really need to be fixed up, then go ahead and start posting listings for it to get roommates if that's what you're trying to do, if you're trying to rent it out to make money. But there you go. That's what I did to buy a house in my early 20s, and also some tips of what you should think of and consider when you're looking to buy a home. And if you like this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you next time.